inspire, connect, and enable the ecosystem of entrepreneurs. Welcome to Hubcast by Impact Hub Lagos, a podcast for the Nigerian innovator, changemaker, and entrepreneur. In each episode, we will bring to you exciting and inspiring content where we will share knowledge, insights, opportunities, and real innovative stories from the Impact Hub Lagos community. As the bloodline of our economies, entrepreneurs need to be supported and given every opportunity and resource to succeed. It is our mission to empower you from intention to impact.
This week, we have with us award-winning film and television executive, Chichi Nwoko. Dubbed a woman to know if you're doing business in West Africa by Forbes Africa, Chichi started her media and broadcasting career nearly 2 decades ago, working at top US network television affiliates. Committed to bringing her experience back home to Nigeria, she took on the role of Deputy Director of International Sponsorship and Sales, plus Group's Development Strategy at Optima Media, where she spearheaded the inaugural production plus frameworks for Idols in Nigeria, X Factor, and Nigeria's Got Talent. In 2015, she expanded into the film industry with the movies Road to Yesterday, as well as Lionheart, Nigeria's first entry for the Best International Feature Film at the 92nd Academy Awards. She has also been appointed as co-executive producer and producer in charge of all production for Super Eagles 2022 World Cup qualifying matches played in Nigeria. In this episode, we discuss strategies for achieving goals and results as a team, as well as teamwork and project management.
Welcome to the show, Chichi.
Thank you, Sioma.
Right, so we're just going to go right into it. So seeing that you've done so many amazing things in media, I'm looking at your profile and I'm seeing Nigeria's Got Talent, I'm seeing Nigeria Idol, I'm seeing things in sports, in TV, you've worked with Genevieve. My goodness, I would just really like to know how, you've been able to do so many amazing things. You've worked, with so many projects. How do you turn each and every single one into the amazing results, that they come out in? Please tell us, we'd like to know.
So once again, thank you. My name is Chichi Nwoko. I am a 20 plus year media professional, and I would describe myself as a true PanAfricanist. I'm in love with Africa, and more especially, I'm in love with the African story and Africa's potential. And so, like you said, my journey started in radio and doing a lot of internships. And I think that in order to excel, learning, training early on in your career is something that I think people don't do enough of. And I think it's very important. And so I worked on internships. I'd worked for the talent coordinator for the Apollo Theater in New York, where literally she would just kind of send me out there to do errands. And so it gave me opportunities to learn and make mistakes and see how people worked in high stress situations. I was passionate about it. After working in media in the States for about 10, 12 years, I decided to relocate back to Nigeria and work on the projects that you talked about. And I think that during my career, I would say that I've worked with amazing leaders and I've worked with not so amazing leaders. And the great thing about the not so amazing leaders, I believe they kind of teach you what you don't want to be, right? I've also worked with fantastic team members and I've worked with non-fantastic team members. And I think at every point when you have a team and you always have like just that one person that doesn't fit in, you always wonder, well, how does the leadership not see that this isn't a cohesive team?
Yeah.
So being a part of the process at any point in your career, I think is great to kind of learn so that when you get to the point when you are the leader, you're taking from those experiences to make sure that you're creating teams that can work. One thing that I would say that has been consistent in every team that I've worked in is as a leader, being true to my person, right? And being consistent to whatever that leadership brand is, right? So if somebody's going to come and work with me, they know or they've heard that, okay, she's this kind of a leader. Mm-hmm. So they know that before they come in, if they want to work for somebody that's going to push for excellence, who's going to stay on them, who's also going to get their hands dirty, right? And I think it's very good to just be clear. Don't try to be something else. Let people know so that you can attract the right team and the right culture.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. So teams that work and being a consistent leader, that sounds amazing. But I would really like to know one critical success factor. Like if you were supposed to give, okay, so maybe not one, so maybe 3 in terms of KPIs for a team to say, this is who I am as a leader. These are my expectations. And everyone just kind of needs to align so that we get the best results. What will those 3 be?
So I'll go a step back and just really define for me what it takes to build a successful team. The first thing I would say is that everyone needs to have trust, right? So
very important.
You need to trust me as a leader, and I need to trust you, Isioma, that I've asked you to do X, and I believe 100% that you can do it.
Sure.
Right? And then we need to be able to communicate, which I think is extremely important. Everyone in your team, if you trust them, then whatever they bring to the table, you should be allowed to have a conversation around it. You should be allowed to debate it openly, right?
Yeah.
And come in there with a clear mind, and people should be able to contribute. So I think you need to create that kind of atmosphere. And then when you've had those conversations, I think it's always important to understand what the action points are. Because sometimes you have meetings, and I know a lot of us do, where you've met and you've talked and you've talked at the meeting. At the end of the meeting, you're like, "What? I don't understand. I don't understand, right? What was that for, right?" And so always have a plan of action and let everybody be clear on that. And then the next thing is that when you have that plan of action, I think it's important to hold everyone accountable. So everyone is clear on the team in terms of what their roles are, right? And then every team member, hold me accountable even if I'm the leader and I haven't done something that I said I should do, right? And open that, not to criticize or put somebody down, but just for the cause of we all have the same objective, right? So you can tell people, well, you need to do X because it's affecting my work, right? In that context. And then achieve on focusing results, right? Let it be very, very clear at the beginning. I always like to start every project like explaining to the people that I'm working with, this is what success looks like to me, right? And paint the picture, make it vivid, make it very, very clear, right? So that at least people can think about as they're painting that picture with you, right? Are you using the right colors, right? Is this a woman when it really needs to look like a man, right? And so they too should have the agency to self-correct if they're doing the wrong things. So I think then when you then look at the KPIs that you set, there's an acronym. I say just think smart, right? Yeah. And that's being very specific, right? I think a lot of times we have teams that don't really know what they're doing or what they're supposed to be doing. So go with each person and be very, very specific with what you want them to achieve. I just want to mute that. And then have them be measurable. So I'm going to give like very, very rudimentary example, specific. Go to the grocery store and buy me an apple. 5 apples, 10 apples. Don't leave it to chance, right? So you may think, okay, you've given somebody instruction, go get apples for the room, right? And you think that they should count and they should know, right? But no, do the background work and let them know it's 5. What's your exact expectation? So be able to measure that. And then make sure that it's attainable, right? So I'm asking you to get apples, but I'm not asking you to go and make snow in Nigeria, right? Like make sure that whatever you're asking the people to do, you have the tools to actually get them to deliver what you're asking them. And then be realistic, right? So don't ask them to get the apples and make an apple pie in 10 minutes, right? So just with time. And I'm using very basic things, but
I
right?
Get that. Yeah.
And then be time bound, right?
Yeah.
I want this today, or actually I don't buy it at the end of the week, right? Like because the person can think, if you're not time bound, then I'll make it a priority for when I think it's important for me to do it, right? Because maybe I have other pressing needs, or maybe another boss has sent me something. So make sure that you've communicated that so that if there's anything in that they can't achieve, they can come back to you immediately and say, okay, I can't do this because of XYZ. And then you can and I think asking, are you clear? Is this okay? Right? Because I also have had team members where I've given them everything, right? And not asked, are you okay?
Yeah.
And
they didn't think to ask either.
Yes. And then they came back and it was like, no. I want to give an example. I sent my driver to go get me food. And I said, can you please go to the place and get me some rice and chicken? An hour later, he came back. He was like, Madam, I couldn't find, which place?
Oh, that's funny.
Like, which place? And I'm like, the place? He's like, I don't know what you're talking. I'm like, the restaurant called, he's like, okay, right? It's so basic, right? But maybe additional information to just say, do you understand? The place I'm talking about is the restaurant. Because technically speaking, the place could be any place, right? And so in terms of KPI, I think that I would kind of condense them into timeliness and timelines, budget, quality and effectiveness, right? And so for timelines, I think you need to be clear, like I said earlier, like, is this time bound, right? How fast or slow do we need to complete this? If it's a task that needs to be done over and over again, right? Working through the efficiencies to make sure that the timelines indeed can work, right? So that you're creating processes and then just kind of assessing like, okay, how much time did we dedicate to this and how much time was actually spent, right? Because all those things in terms of KPIs, time is money, right? So, you know, if you are supposed to have 2 people working on a project at a certain time, but because of delays and what have you, now there are 4 people. Those are all KPIs that you want people to kind of be very clear. I'm expecting 2 people to finish this project in 1 week. Right? And then you're going to be judged on you finishing it at the time required with the resources not going over. In relation to time, then obviously, like I said, budget is key, right? So, whatever budget that was started, right? Are you keeping to that budget? Are you continuously revising the budget? How much time are you putting into like your research to create the budget, your planning, your approvals process? Is that efficient? And so those are some key things. And then quality. So it's not just about saving money and it's not just about doing things on time.
Okay.
I think it's very important that the customer, and that customer doesn't have to be an external customer. It can be your boss, right? That is expecting you to do certain things. Are they happy? Are they complaining? Are they asking you for revisions, right? What's your output? And I think being able to assess those things, like everybody wants that person that once I've asked them to do something, I can go to bed, right? It's done one time. Yep. We don't have to do it over again. So I think that that's really important to focus on, making sure that whatever feedback and putting in feedback mechanisms, right? Even for that customer, right? To continuously give you feedback so that before the end of the project, right? You haven't done the whole thing and then you're getting a bad report and you're wondering why. And then effectiveness, right? And I think I've kind of mentioned this before. How many of us have been in companies or done projects where they've started and canceled? Like they're always starting and canceling, or they're not finishing, or they're pausing. They ran out of budget. The project they were doing midway, they find out it doesn't align with our vision, right? That all costs money, right? And so you want to make sure that as a company, as a team leader, that before you get into projects, that you're making sure that you're doing the work, because that signifies to me that you're not planning very well. You're kind of, there's some bosses I've worked with that, they just have an idea and they just send everybody running, right? And so you kind of need to make sure that you're not that person, right? That and I'm sometimes guilty of that, right? Like I have an idea, especially entrepreneurs, right? You're on here and you're here and you're on here. And sometimes you just don't have the capacity. So you haven't thought it through. So I think that that's a key thing. And then finally, for your KPIs, your ROI.
Okay.
Right. So are you getting a return on your investment, right? With everything that you're doing, whether it's financial or time, right? So people are investing their time for money. You want to make sure that if I'm paying somebody to do X, I'm getting that, right? Yeah. So you kind of need to track that overall. And ultimately, I think that's the most important thing when you have to kind of summarize all these points.
Wow, Chichi, I feel like you've just given us a masterclass on team management and running successful teams. Thank you for that. I think, a wise man once said, what doesn't get measured doesn't get done.
Absolutely.
So, when you say measurement, being clear, being time bound, I think all those are excellent. Now, how do you measure? Where do you being clear and, repeating yourself and checking that they understand, your team members understand what the expectations are? Where do you draw the line between being condescending, because if you keep repeating yourself and asking if you're clear, people might think, does she think I'm stupid? Why does she keep asking? How do you kind of manage that so they know that you're just only checking that, you guys are on the same page? How do you manage that really?
So I think once again with communication, right?
It's a fine line.
Yeah. So I think with a good leader, one of the things is being transparent, right? And it's okay to kind of be like, listen, This is my style. This is why I'm doing this, right? Let me know if it's too much, right? Feel free to come back to me and explain the reason why I'm checking constantly. I would almost put a framework, right? So obviously if you're checking, there has to be a reason why you're checking. And that person needs to be very, very clear.
Okay.
And so I think that would then take me to the question in terms of how do you deal with teams that aren't managing or effectively executing projects? And how do you deal with people that aren't handling KPIs very well? So the first thing I would do, I try to assess myself as a leader. Have I given you the right tools that I'm asking you to do? Right? Is it me? Right? So I do a full analysis, all right, an evaluation to make sure I've asked Isioma to go to the store. Have I given her money on time? Have I given her a car? Have I given her a driver? Is there gas in the car? Right? Because sometimes we just want to say, well, it's the person, right? And that's why. And, companies haven't actually built structures. So first I do that evaluation. And then if you find that it's you as the team leader that has the shortcoming, then change the objective, change the performance requirements very quickly and address it, right? And communicate that it's me. If you do find out, however, that it is the other person, right? I think it's very important, once again, to still do that evaluation. Have I told them exactly what to do, right? Identify exactly what the problem is and communicate with them, right? So this is where the gap is, right? Why is there that gap there? Do you have a suggestion as to how you think we can fix that gap? If you think that their suggestion is valid, then okay, you know what? We're going to go with that and we're going to track it. And this is how we're going to track it. Or I'm going to empower you and tell you tell me how best we should track it.
Okay.
Right? If I've given you the opportunity to self-correct and you can't do that, then I will come in and say, okay, so we're going to have to do this together. Right? We're going to have to do it like this, like this, like this. I'm going to check with you one day until we get to here. Right. And I think it's just always communicating and defining. So it's not forever, right? But we're going to track this until we get here because these are the consequences, right? Both for you not delivering and for the entire project, right? So it's not a personal thing, but it can become a personal thing for you because we're not going to keep people that are not delivering. It's costing the business money. If you are the team member, right? Who doesn't like team members that don't just sit around and wait for the boss to say, okay, you're not delivering. And they come and say, there was no fuel. There was not. And you're just like, why didn't you tell me? Right? Be innovative, right? Like go and say, okay, you've asked me to do this because I'm paying you, right? I've asked you to do this or you've asked me to do this. These are my issues, right? But don't just come with the issues. Offer some kind of solution, right? So I can't do this. Or a couple, because this and this and this is lacking. I'm not sure what the company issues are, but maybe we can get this done like this, right? Are you okay with that? Right? And at least for me, it says, okay, you know what? At least you're thinking, right? At least you value that whether or not I have the resources, I'm still paying you, right? And you're trying to be innovative and you're trying to contribute. So I think it goes both ways. If you ultimately see yourself as a problem solver, both on the leadership side and on the team member side, you're there, you're hired, you're being paid to solve problems.
Sure.
Right? Not to be a part of the problem.
Yeah.
So ideally, and I'll end with this, people say, if you're a leader, surround yourself with the best team. Right? And so for you to add value, because I think a lot of times we kind of are always like complaining, the company, the leader, the boss, the this, the that, but they're also like juggling so many things.
And they're human beings.
And they're human beings, right? So for the piece of pie that you're given, I think it's important to just be like, I'm the expert here. I'm going to own it. Right. And that's also your brand to just be like, okay, this issue's this, but I solved it. Right. And that's how I think you make yourself a mainstay. People always be like, don't worry. Go to Isioma. Somehow she always figures out a way. Yes. Right. And obviously not to the point where you're burning out. Like we're talking about like within reason.
Yeah.
To kind of help with achieving your KPIs.
Okay. Well, excellent. Thank you, Chichi.
Thank you.
I think one more question for me would be, what is that project or team experience that you've had that just left you in total shock? Like, wow.
Good shock or bad shock? Any shock?
Either good would be great, bad would be an amazing learning experience for our viewers, listeners.
So I'll give one good and one bad.
Okay.
And I'll be vague and just kind of talk about the experience. I think I've had one team experience where it felt that everything was disconnected. There was no strong vision. There was no strong culture. And I think some things that are also important in teams is to also have the right size team, right? Have you been on a project and it's like, dude, there's so many people here and it's so much confusion because nobody knows what they're doing. And it's hard to figure out exactly creating conflict. Or been on a project that's so big, but the team is so small and you're so overworked and you're burnt out. And yes, it would be something that you would love to do, but you're wearing like 20 hats and it's just too much. Right?
Yeah.
And I think that in this company, depending on where you were, they had both problems, right? Where it was like too big in some areas and where they really needed to have enough people, it was just too small. And it was very, very stressful. But one of the powerful things that they had was a great vision.
Okay.
So people still tried, even with all the dysfunctionality, they were tied to the vision. I thought that was actually very powerful.
Okay.
To see how people would be willing to go through uncomfortable situations because they believe in your cause as a leader. Okay. Right. And I think it's really important not to fail them. Okay. I've been in a situation where, and it was a production that was extremely difficult. The time was very short to execute, but the team was so incredible. Right. And at every point, I think in a normal circumstance, people would have given up and they pushed through and they kept going. And it's always beautiful when you find people that have like minds that are committed to their craft, right? So it doesn't become a job.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, this is me, right? And so they're looking to put out excellence regardless. And that definitely comes through in the output. And that particular team till today has been one that I've been extremely inspired about. And every time that I'm looking for people, I definitely look for people with those kind of traits, people that are passionate, people that will push themselves without having somebody looking over their shoulder or telling them what to do just because they know that it's the right thing to do.
Okay. Nice. Well done. So much to learn. A lot of experience here, Chichi. We could be here literally 5 hours just talking about teams and the amazing results, how you're driving the various teams that you've worked with to produce excellent results. But we don't have that much time.
We don't.
So we're going to have to round up here. I'm hoping that, we could do something else with you, Chichi, maybe just further the conversation on teams and maybe focus more on results and just hear how you've driven the teams and, examples of some of the amazing results that, you've been able to achieve. So thank you once again.
Thank you very much
for coming to the show. This is Chichi, the founder and CEO of the What Network. Yeah. And it's been an amazing conversation today with you, Chichi. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.